last week, and if you're on your page, it's Roman numeral 3, the tabernacle. So basically today we're going to cover the last half of Exodus through Deuteronomy. If I can, race through that much for you in one day here. Probably all are familiar with the tabernacle. And, whoops, I forgot to get the pens out. I forgot to bring the ones in my bag because they're sitting by my chair at home. So I'm sure that many of you know how the tabernacle's laid out and all that, but I'm just going to draw it up here real quick. So, well, not like that one. Okay, so it faces east. So this is the door, and it's a long rectangular tent. It's not as big as a circus tent that we would have now, but they would have considered this a big tent. But compared to the kind of tents we build now, it's not a huge giant tent. I actually saw a model of this size, and you go, oh, it's smaller than you expect. But we're used to bigger stuff. For them, this would have been a very big tent. Right about here is the veil. And that divides the room into the tent into two parts. The back part is supposed to be a real square, and the front part says oblong part. This one's called the holy place. This is called the Holy of Holies. And around it is a big courtyard, bigger than what I'm showing, like that. And over here is the entrance to the courtyard. You can only get in one way. The fire marshals would have a fit. You have no exit, but you can only get in one way. It's more centered. Excuse me, my picture isn't like geometrically centered. This would be centered. I'm going to take east out. Right over here, oh, it's square too, excuse me, is the bronze altar. And that's where the sacrifices take place. Okay? Right over here is something called, I've always called it the laver. If you were Jewish, you would probably say laver, because laver is an English. You know how we put our emphasis on the first syllable most of the time? They don't. They put their emphasis on the last syllable or the second syllable. So, for the last 45 years of my life, I've been saying this incorrectly. And I probably will not fix that. So this is called that, laver. And it is a big round basin that holds water. And a lot of people think it was designed as a double basin, that you filled it to the top and then it could drip into the lower basin so that you could wash without contaminating your water. But as far as the design goes, God didn't put a drawing in here for us, so I don't know. Right over here is the candlestick. And it's on this side. So it's on the south side of the building. So when you walk in, you would come in this way. First thing you see is the bronze altar. Then you see a laver. Then you see the door. If you were allowed to go into the holy place, which only some were, on this side would be the thing. Okay? Mm-hmm. Over here is the table for the bread. They called it show bread. Cool. All right, that's right there. Right over here, right in front of the veil. And I'm kind of thinking that it's like really close to the veil. Like you really couldn't walk behind it. Maybe you could, but as it's described, sometimes it's even described as so close to the veil that it's inside here. but it's not, it's out there, okay? But when you deal with this, it's like you're already in there. So that's why you see that. That's called the golden altar. Of incense. Okay? And there's only one piece of furniture inside the Holy of Holies, and that is the Ark of the Covenant. And it would probably sit like this, and it has the poles that go like that, and I'm doing it looking straight down, so I can't draw an angel, but there's an angel coming up on this side and an angel coming up on that side. Okay, over the top, arching over the top. All right, so they all have meaning. Every single one has meaning, and this is a huge, giant picture of Jesus Christ in many of his different functions that he did. And this is how God set up their worship system. So when Moses is up on the mountain, he's getting the instructions on exactly how to build this. And it's so important that in Exodus, the whole thing's written out twice. I mean, there's from chapter 25, other than the golden calf incident in the middle, from chapter 25 to 40 is how to build this thing. That's a lot of Bible space on how to build this thing. So you could think it's got to have some important meaning to it other than just make sure it's exactly this size. Well, it's an exact copy of what's in heaven. Revelation tells us that, and when Moses is up on the altar, when Moses is up on the mountain, God says, be sure you make it exactly like the copy, exactly like the pattern I'm showing you. So it is a copy of what's in heaven. And if you read through Revelation, you'll find different things like, oh, there's the altar of incense, and it has a meaning to it, and there's things that look just like that Ark of the Covenant. So I want to just quickly go through all the parts and show you. I have to do this fast. And normally I would go like, let's do a whole series on this because I absolutely love the tabernacle. I really do. So an average Jewish man, I'm just going to say it like that, an average Jewish man is allowed to come in through here, and he stops right about here. Okay, right around this area. He stops. All along here are things that the priests use and stuff, and I don't even know exactly how, but it's all, and can all be taken down. So this is, the walls are fabric walls on poles. Everything can be dismantled and carried and taken down. And it's big and it's heavy, and it took a lot of people to carry this thing. And but he would come in here, and he would, for more or less, the reason you enter is to make a sacrifice. So he would bring in his animal, and he would meet the priest would make sure the animal qualifies, and then it would be a sacrifice for his sin. And the details of this is the book of Leviticus. Which animal you bring for what things is all the book of Leviticus. And as much as Leviticus is hard to read, if you understand some of the background, you start to pick up why all these pictures are. Why did God give so many detailed instructions? And God doesn't write things down for no reason. So he would come in, and more or less what would happen is the priest would kill the animal, and the man would put his hand on the head of the animal. And what is going on is the sins are being transferred to the animal. The animal dies instead of the man, and the blood is taken and sprinkled. Okay? Sprinkled at the foot of the altar. Huge pictures there. Lots of times it was a lamb. So we know that Jesus is the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. We know that the blood was sprinkled, came down the cross. We know that's just pictures. We know that our sins were transferred to him. So that's a huge picture. Okay, so now for the priests, not that I want to rush past that. I mean, I would love to spend the whole time on that, but the priests are going to want to go into the holy place. And in order for them to get into the holy place, they have to have a sacrifice for themselves to cover their sins. And they have to make sure they're clean. So they have to wash their feet, they're barefoot, and they have to wash their hands because they have just killed an animal. If you've ever had a hunter in your family and you had to help the skinning and the butchering, you get really, really dirty. And so they have to be clean. And so this is where they wash. This is very, very similar to 1 John 1:9. That says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So that's a good picture of that. Okay? You walk in, only the priest could go in. Okay? Only a priest could go in there. And they were to relight the menorah check it twice a day, every morning and every night, and had to keep it going. So they had to trim the thing. I'm guessing they did one at a time so that they could put one light out, trim the wick, and without the other lights going out, because the light would never go out. And then they would do that, and I had to do that every morning and every evening. A priest had to go in there. You guys know a story of a priest who, well, let me wait, I'm jumping again, excuse me. And so that's the picture of Jesus as the light of the world. So this happens to have a lot of Jesus' I ams. The book of John is, when he does his I ams, he could have picked all kinds of I ams. But he picks the ones that reflect this. It's really cool. So he is the light of the world. Once a week, they put the bread on the table. There's a whole lot of cool things about the bread. It's bigger than you think. I figured out how much flour it took. I know how much flour it takes to make a loaf of bread, like normal size loaf of bread, and how much flour they had in it. It's like 4 to 5 times bigger than a loaf of bread, but it has no yeast, so it's a big old flat thing. And they pile up 6 on one pile and 6 on the other for the 12 tribes. And it stays in there, and somehow that bread, unwrapped, you leave bread unwrapped at my house for a week, and it is dry and stale. That bread is still good after a week. And they pull it out on Sabbath morning, give it to the priest to eat, and they put the fresh bread in. So Jesus is the bread of life. Right? All right. This is a very interesting thing. That's a little gold altar. It's all of like this, about this tall. And it's made out of wood. I forgot to tell you all the things that they're made out of. This is all meaningful. It's made out of wood, covered with gold. It's got a little rim on it. And what they would do is they had these things called censers, which I think is like a frying pan. Well, it's all gold. And you have this gold frying pan. They would go out every morning and every evening as they checked the lights. They had to offer the incense. So they would go out and they would get coals off of the bronze altar. And they put them in their frying pan. And they had to have 2 handfuls of incense. And it's a very special recipe for the incense. Every single detail is precise. They probably had to put that incense into another little container because you can't hold 2 handfuls of incense and this and get in there and do stuff. So you have to be able to carry this stuff. So you kind of see sometimes with them carrying a thing on a chain, maybe, so you've seen these pictures. That's just us trying to figure out how did they logistically do all this, So they go in there and they would put the coals on the altar and they pour the incense on the altar and it would puff up in a big puff of smoke. And that represents the prayers of the saints. Revelation tells us that directly, that the incense on the altar, and God smells it. And he loves it. And it's a soothing aroma. And so that's really important. And it has all kinds of more to it than that, but just... Now, this is the veil. As far as I can tell, there's no parting way in the veil. So how they get past the veil I don't know, lift it, crawl under it, because I don't know of a doorway through the veil. But by the time Herod's temple was built, which is the second temple, and they had a veil, Josephus tells us that the fabric was the thickness of your hand.
Yeah. Wow.
Now, if I had fabric that thick, I have no pair of scissors that could cut through that. I have no rolling scissor cutter thing that can go through that. That's how thick it was. So it is impossible to rip apart. Just dangling that ahead of time for you, okay? All right, so nobody is allowed into the Holy of Holies. There's one exception. There's actually two exceptions. Moses gets to go in. Moses gets to go in whenever he wants. That's so unprecedented for everything else that's going to happen there. But other than Moses, the high priest gets to go in there one day a year. And here is the Ark of the Covenant. I think I'm going to draw it sideways for you. So, okay, and it has a ring here, and a ring here, and the poles like that. Okay, get that? Okay, so it's made of wood. It's covered with gold inside and out. And there's a lid. See if I can do this. That fits. That doesn't quite work, but you guys get the picture, okay? All right, so this is called an ark. An ark is the word's not the same word for ark as Noah's Ark. It's a different word for ark. It is a box that is to hold something very precious. And inside this ark, there's going to be three things. There's going to be the tablets of the covenant. Remember the tablets we talked about and how God wrote on the tablets in this very important covenant? That's why it's called the Ark of the Covenant, because it's going to hold the covenant. And then the next thing that's going to be in there is a golden pot of manna.
Golden what?
Pot of manna. And then it's not in there yet in our story, but it will be before we leave today. And that is the rod of Aaron. And those things are going to go inside the box. Now, you start to think about what's inside the box. And every one of these things is a perfect provision. This is a perfect covenant given by God to us. This is perfect food, and this is the picture of leadership that God has picked out for the people. Every one of them is perfect, and it goes in the box. And every one of them is broken by us, by the people. They break the covenant, they hate the manna, and they reject the authority of the rod. So what is in the box is God's perfect provision, which has been completely rejected, which is a representation of sin inside the box. So when you put something perfect in the box, now the box is going to be Jesus. The box is gold and wood. That pictures his hypostatic union, his God-man combination. The wood is his human part. The gold is his God part. And he will do all of these perfectly. He will keep the covenant perfectly. He not only feeds off of God's word himself, he is God's word. And he is our perfect authority and everything. So he is going to put it in there perfectly. And he is going to keep it. But he is also going to take it broken for us. So he puts all of our broken sin inside him. So he carries our sin inside his box. See the pictures going on there? Now over the top of the box is a golden lid. And on this lid is, okay. you can see that I've been drawing for kids. Okay? I think actually the wings are over, but anyway, you get the idea, okay? There's two looking down, and their job, these are cherubim, their job is to face each other. This is very specific. Their faces are to be looking down at this spot. This is very specific. They're looking down in the box. And I've heard it explained that this represents God's holiness. Specifically, one being righteousness and one being justice. And their job is to guard or protect God's holiness. Now, we're also going to bring love and mercy into this, so you watch. But really, it represents all of God's essence. Okay, everything God is. And inside this box we have a contradiction going on here. We have everything that has come out to be sin inside the box. And we have God's holiness looking down on the box. Okay, actually that doesn't work. You can't have sin and God's holiness in the same place. That doesn't work. So once a year, this is called the mercy seat. And if you're teaching this to kids, they're thinking that, okay, this is God's throne, and they're thinking chair. Because that's what a throne looks like. This is not a chair. There's no cushion there. I used to think that maybe there was a cushion there, you know. No, there's no cushion there. There's nothing there. But this is where God will sit. God can't actually sit. He has no body, so he can't sit. But his glory is going to sit right here. And it's going to go like this. And holiness is protecting it. See that? But it's on top of sin, so we have this big problem. So once a year, on the Day of Atonement, the high priest is permitted to go in. And he has to go to the altar. It's a big ceremony. He's got to do every single little piece exactly right. If he doesn't, it's not going to turn out pretty. So he has to sacrifice for himself and get himself clean. When he does this, you know how they wear the big fancy turban and the stuff? He wears very plain clothes. As a matter of fact, he basically wears his underwear, which is a tunic that's just plain. He doesn't get to dress up for this particular one. And he goes and they do the sacrifice and they purify him, his sins, and then he does another sacrifice for the nation, and he takes the blood in a container. And he also does the incense. How he does it all, I haven't quite figured it out. Is it 2 trips in, whatever? But he has to bring the incense in because this glory is so bright, he'll die. So he brings the incense in, and that cloud of smoke covers the glory. And then he goes in with his bowl of blood. I think I would be absolutely terrified to do this. One step wrong, he's dead. He dies instantly. So he brings the blood in and he sprinkles it on the mercy seat. Righteousness looks down and says, that's good. Justice looks down and says, that's satisfied. And that's a picture of propitiation. And God's holiness is satisfied and the sin is covered with the blood. And that's what happens in the Holy of Holies. I just love it. I just love it. Since then, let me jump ahead of the story. When this really happens, they have to do this every year. Because this is just a picture of atonement. This is just a picture of justification. This isn't the real atonement. This is just God is teaching it to the people on the day that it really happened. And the Son of God bore our sins on the wood and the blood poured down. And God at that point had to look away. So it's like the one and only time when the turkey turned away. He had to look away because he cannot look at sin. Its holiness is so holy, it cannot do that. He had to abandon him. It says, that's when he yells out, my God, why have you forsaken me? And for 3 hours, Jesus was carrying the punishment for our sins. And then when he says it is finished, at that moment, there's an earthquake. We already know that the place was blacked out. Everything. I can't even hardly picture what this moment was. But at that moment, the veil tears. And it tears, and it's, by the way, it's something like, I don't know, 30 feet high or something like this. It tears from top to bottom, which opens the Holy of Holies up, which means we can go in. And the picture of that just does it for me every time. I sometimes, I should do more often, will sit in my little spot in my house and pretend I'm sitting in the corner and just looking at the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy of Holies and the glory of the Lord shining there. And I tell you what, I can't say, you know what, God? I need da 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 da. You know, this and that, and the car and the tire, and would you please help me? It's not like my list of prayers. I just can't. All I can do is just sit there and.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite times to pretend I'm crowded in the little corner. This is silly, and you guys realize I have a really crazy, wild imagination. But I felt like one time I was sitting there in the corner, this happened more than once actually, and all of a sudden Jesus comes and sits down in the corner next to me, and we just sit there and look at the glory. It's just a sweet moment. So now you know how freaky weird I am.
It's sad, and even that you specifically saved Jesus, that his chosen people don't see the veil torn yet.
No,
They refuse to acknowledge. They still are stuck in the.
in the picture of it, they don't.
So sad.
It's the comparison is so easy to see if you have eyes to see. So I just wanted to show you that. In our story in Exodus, they finally finished building all the pieces, and they get it all built. And we haven't had a Day of Atonement yet. We haven't had this ceremony yet. The tabernacle's finally finished, and the glory of the Lord moves in. And it was like, oh! Somehow they get to see this. And the cloud comes down over the tabernacle and the glory moves in, and it's just awesome. And it says that the last verse of Exodus is, and this is important, it says, throughout the last 3 verses, throughout all their journeys, whenever the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the sons of Israel would set out. But if the cloud was not taken up, they did not set out until the day when it was taken up. For throughout all their journeys, the cloud of the Lord was on the tabernacle by day, and there was fire in it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel. So for the next 40 years, they are going to be able to, at any moment, look and see it. It will always be seen. Now think about that as the story unfolds. The cloud is always there, the glory is always there, and God has now lives for the first time since Eden in the presence of his people. He has moved in. As a matter of fact, that's what Shekinah means. It means the presence living there. It means a living glory. The glory is there. So it's called the Shekinah glory. The word Shekinah is not in the Hebrew Bible, but that's what it means. The presence is that. So that's pretty cool. All right, so jump into the book of Leviticus. We're going to go to just a little bit of it because I don't want to, scare you to death. And for the next week, after the glory moves in, for the next week, Aaron and his two oldest sons, Nadab and Abihu, are going to go through priest orientation, ordination week, right? So they go through ritual after ritual after ritual, because they are going to be the priests who enter this place. So they have to learn all the rules that go. They have to have all these. They have to sacrifice each day. They wash here. They do this. They do that. They go through all these steps. And so now we're down to. That's what chapters 8 and 9 of Leviticus is about. Is how to get the priest ordained in there and doing his thing. So we are now like maybe 1 or 2 or 3 days into actual priest function in the tabernacle. Okay? And Nadab and Abihu are Aaron's two oldest sons, and they decide they're going to burn some incense, probably at the wrong time. So they have their fire pans, and what do? They get incense, they get coals that are not the right coals. So they go, I don't know if they go to their campfire, I don't know if they go to someone's cook stove, I don't know where they go, but they get coals someplace. They do something that is what is called strange fire. And there's a lot of discussion by, who knows, all these smart people that say what this strange fire is, but that's the best I can come up with, is this thing. So they bring this in, and they put the incense on it, and they walk in. First of all, I think only one is allowed in at a time, and they're both in there, and they pour that. Some people think they actually peeked in. I don't know, it doesn't actually say that. This wall is still here. And, but they do not do it step by step exactly right, and they're dead. Fire comes out and burns them up. It doesn't burn their bodies, and it doesn't burn their clothes, but it burns them up. Now, that's different fire than I know of. And we're talking like maybe the next day. Can you imagine being Aaron? And he's not immediately, Moses says to Aaron, you are not allowed to mourn. The rest of the people will mourn for you. You are not allowed to mourn. They had to get relatives to come in there. I've heard that they came in there and they snuck in backwards, kind of like they did with Noah, and pulled them out so that they wouldn't see, and took them out of the camp and buried them outside somewhere. So that's how holy God's holiness is. They could not treat it with disrespect. That's not going to work. Turns out that the next two sons, which are Ithamar and Eleazar. And they are sons 3 and 4. They will become the next priests. So I assume that the ordination ceremony starts over again, and they go on and on. And Leviticus lays out all these details as to why you do it like this and like this. And when it's not followed, God takes this very seriously. And you don't want to mess with the holiness of God. And I was thinking how many people in our culture think that that God is, that it's not an issue. Like, okay, I was a good person. I can just go stand in front of God and say, da 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 da, let me into heaven. I'm justifying myself. They have no clue what standing for the holiness of God is like. And it won't hold up. And that's why it's so hard to reach. Sometimes it's so much easier to give the gospel to someone who knows they are a sinner. It's like why the Pharisees could not believe, but the tax collectors could. You know, it's just really hard. So anyway, that's Leviticus 10. You can read that if you want to see how that goes. And then Numbers. We're going to jump into Numbers. Numbers is called Numbers because in the very beginning they take a census and number the people. That's just like that easy to figure out. They count them all up. They count up the men of fighting age. They have about 600,000. And they have how many are in this tribe, and this tribe, and this tribe, and this tribe. And they go through all the details of this. And then it's time to move out. Okay, so here's where we've been. We've been down here at Mount Sinai. We're down here, from here to here until they leave is about a year. So of the 40 years, this is year 1. It takes 3 months to get from here to here, and then it takes 9 months to do the tabernacle, build it, get ready to move out. So we're at the beginning of year 2, and it's time to move out, and we're going to go from here up to Kadesh Barnea, which is right here. So this is an 11-day journey, right? That's what it actually tells us that in the beginning of Deuteronomy. It took 11 days to get from Sinai to Kadesh Barnea. There's going to be a week layover because of a problem, and I don't know if the week layover is part of the 11 days or added to the 11 days. I looked at that, couldn't figure that out quickly enough to answer that question, so I'm just going to leave that one dangling. So they're on their way up, they get packed up, they have to take this whole tabernacle down. The cloud lifts and leads them up, and we have all kinds of things that happen. So on the way up, the very first thing that happens is a bunch of guys are arguing. We're at Numbers 10 maybe. And a bunch of guys are arguing and complaining, and they're outside the camp, and God just says, okay, I've had enough of that. Fire goes and kills them. Okay, I would learn really quick to stifle the complaining. But within 3 verses, they are complaining. And this time they're complaining because they're sick of manna. They don't want the manna, they want meat. They want to go back to Egypt, they want leeks and garlics, and they want some meat. So Moses goes, one of my favorite verses, Moses goes to God. Moses, by the way, intercedes over and over and over. They do something, God says, I'm going to kill them all. And Moses goes, no, he's the interceder. And I'm wondering how many times God would look down and say, oh, tell me I'm going to kill her. And Moses goes, no, let me intercede for her. So it's going to happen over and over and over again. And Moses is constantly interceding for the people. So anyway, he goes to God and he goes, how on earth am I going to get meat for, how many herds would I'm thinking if he was talking in our language, how many semis am I going to have to pull in to get enough food to feed these guys? And one of my favorite verses is Numbers 11:23 maybe, and it says, now you shall see whether my word will come true for you or not. And I thought, I love that verse. Now you shall see whether my word will come true for you or not. So God brings in the quail. Now the quail, the amount of quail is I think, we're going back a long time memory, because I did not relook this up, 3.5 feet deep. And I think it runs for probably 2 or 3 acres of land. It's a lot of quail. More quail than they need. When God keeps his word, there was more than they could possibly eat. And it said that each man tried to gather 10 homers. You go, okay, that means nothing. And so I look at 10 homers. Each homer is 6 bushels. All right? Each bushel is 8 pecks, or 4 pecks. And each peck is 8 quarts. You multiply all that out, and each man would have to have a semi to carry out his meat. How would they even think of carrying? That's how greedy they became. And then they started stuffing themselves with it so fast that they died from eating. And it said they died with the food between their teeth. Yeah. Okay. So that's the next event. You can read that. And this part of me goes, oh God, please don't let my heart ache this hard. Please don't let my soul get this mad. Don't. Yeah. So they go very far north, and they're at the next place, somewhere in the next place, and we have a little problem with Miriam. Miriam is Moses' older sister, and Aaron's his older brother. Moses is the youngest in the family, and Miriam is not liking the fact that she's not head honcho. And so she starts what I'm guessing is a big gossip fest. So Moses has, his wife Zipporah has died, and he has married another woman. It's a Cushite woman, and she does not like this. And she starts complaining with Aaron, and Aaron starts talking, and I'm thinking because of what's coming down, this spread. And she has what perhaps is a big gossip fest with the ladies of the camp. And so all of a sudden, God talks and he says, Moses and Aaron and Miriam, come up here. So the three of them come to the door, and then he calls Aaron and Miriam up closer. And you could just see like, okay, I'm in for it, I'm in trouble now. And he tells them that they are being judged for judging Moses, and he strikes. And I'm thinking this is why I think it was Miriam who started this, because he doesn't strike Aaron with leprosy, he strikes Miriam with leprosy, and she turns white. Not just like a little bit, she turns full blast, entire body covered with leprosy. Horribly. And Aaron goes, oh no! I mean, it's like he's in this huge panic because he was participating in this. They have to send her out of the camp for a week. Moses intercedes for his sister. Now, he was the one that was gossiped about. And yet he goes to God and begs God to forgive his sister. God says, well, she's got to at least have a week. And when she comes in, that one's solved. Okay, so then we're going to be up to Kadesh Barnea, and I'm going to give you a break so you can breathe and take up with what happened there. Take it up to Kadesh Barnea, and it's time to enter the land. This is the plan. They're right here. That's the southernmost tip there. The plan is this way. Okay, straight in. And so Moses sends in the 12 spies, one from each. And you guys know this story. The 10 come back saying, they all come back saying it's wonderful. 2 come back saying, oh, we can do this. And the other, no, we can't do this. And it's almost just like that, really. It's not quite so dramatic. And of course, they talk the congregation out. Moses gets down on his face and prays to God, and he's interceding again, and God says, okay, that's it. I have shown you 10 major signs, and you have not believed 10 times. So I played this game. You can go home and try the game. Can you, without looking, find the 10 times? That God showed them something, and then they were terrified. Okay, so crossing the Red Sea. All right, so anyways, it's a fun little game to see if you can find 10 times. And I was up at 3 a.m. trying to do that this morning, and there was one that I missed, and I couldn't figure it out because I'm half asleep, and I was just like, I gotta figure it out. Anyway. So, yeah, there's 10 times. And if you look in different commentary Bibles, they sometimes have 10 different times. They'll pick different things. Okay, so anyway, that's a fun thing. It's like when they cry out, "Oh God, we want to go back because we don't have any meat," you know. And so that would be one of the times. Or no water, no food, you know. Or what about like, "Oh, let's build an idol," you know, stuff like this. So those are God's 10 signs, and at the end, they say. Wish that it was that we could go back to Egypt. This is right now at Kadesh Barnea, or that we would die here in the wilderness. And God says, I'm going to answer your prayer. You're going to die here in the wilderness. And he actually says, I'm going to do what you have requested. And that's in Numbers 14, if you want to read that. And so immediately they go, oh, by the way, the 10 spies that say no, die that night. The other guys go, oh, wait a minute. Oh, we could have done it. Let's go now. And God says, no, don't go now. Oh, yeah, we can do it. And Moses says, don't go now. They didn't take the ark there. The glory's not in front of them. They go and they try to charge in from the south. And what happens? A bunch of them die. Okay, so they come back, and now is their wandering in the wilderness. It's actually a 38-year wander because we've already used up 1 year. We're going to have 1 year at the end, so there's 38 years here. As far as I can tell, there's only one big issue that lays out in 3 things during this 38 years. The rest of it is silent. And this is a time of discipline. It's a time of punishment. And except for this one thing that I'm going to tell you about that has these 3 different parts, God keeps it silent. And part of me appreciates that. Because I thought, God, if you really have to cream me for something, can we keep it private? which I don't know. That was just, I don't know if that's, that's just my personal, a little thing that I liked thinking. I'd rather it not be displayed on the, newspapers, but okay, so they go in for a little while and they're wandering around. That's what this is. I do not know how they wandered. Maybe they wandered like this. I have no idea. They just wandered in this area. When the cloud stayed there, they stayed. When the cloud moved, they moved. But that cloud never leaves, even while they're being disciplined. And they can always see it. And they always see the glory, the cloud there. It's always there. God does not leave them. I thought, that's wonderful. Even if you have to get creamed for something, God does not leave you. And and if you have lived your life without getting creamed for something, come see me, because you'd be the only person I've ever met that God hasn't had to discipline for something, And but He doesn't leave either. So that's really cool. Well, one day, there's a group of guys who decide they want to do the incense. And I'm thinking, did you guys ever meet Dathan in the Bible? But they want to do the incense. There's 250 of them. That's part of the group. There's 2 guys who are from the tribe of Reuben. Their names are Nadab and Abihu. Excuse me, I get the 2 combinations of names mixed up. And they are from the tribe of Reuben, and they hook up with a guy named Korah. And Korah is a Levite, but as I was asked very nicely, how do the Levites plan out their stuff? Well, the Levites have actually 3 groups under them. And I can't remember these guys' names at the moment. But there's this group, there's Aaron's group, and there's this group. And Aaron's group gets to be the priests. So if you're a Levite from this group, you get to carry the furniture. And if you're a Levite from this group, you get to carry the fence. Or whatever, right? And some of these guys are the singers that sing. That's going to happen mostly at the temple later. Some of these guys are the doorkeepers, whatever. Well, anyway, one of these two is a line from a guy named Korah. And Korah is a Levite who wants to go inside with burning the incense. So they get this together and they all come. I'm just almost aghast at how blatant this is after the other event, you know? So they come and all 253 of them have their fire pans and they're ready and they say, it's not fair that we don't get to go in. Who chose you? Who chose you guys to go do this? And so, you know, I'm kind of like going quickly and not trying to catch all the details on this one. So they decide that, and God says, God looks down and says, no. And then he says, you better, and Dathan, Abiram, and Korah are the leaders. And he says, Moses, tell everybody to get away from their tents. So here we have their ops, right? Okay, and here's Dathan's, and here's Abiram's, and here's Korah's. If I got my names mixed up, forgive me. And all of Dathan's family stays with him. We are standing for this. We get to go in. Now they're from the tribe of Reuben. And then these guys, we are standing with him. We get to go in. Moses is wrong. Korah's family goes, I don't know. I think I heard about, you know, Nadab and Abihu. And his sons don't stand with him. Okay, you guys know what happens? The earth opens up, swallows them whole. Oh my. People, oh my. You're not going to believe what they say afterwards. But anyway, fire, and then fire comes out and burns up the 250. Okay? Very next day. Very next morning. We're all dying. We're all dying. We can't come anywhere near. We're all going to die. It's all your fault, Moses. That's why the God opened up and blah, blah, blah. And God, it's just like unreal. So God says, all right, Moses, this is what you're going to do. Tell everybody, the leader of each tribe, get your staff. Now the staff is their walking stick, but it's also their picture of authority, okay? And you take your staff and you get everyone, carve your name on your staff. They're probably quite ornate already, but and make sure Aaron's is there. So I'm guessing there's 12 and Aaron's makes 13 because we really do have 13 groups and they're all trying to be in charge, and we're going to see who is the high priest. And so they bring them up and they give them all to Moses, and God tells Moses to go put them in front of the Ark of the Covenant. So Moses can go in there. He puts them in front of the Ark of the Covenant, and the next day they sleep on it, and the next day, I forgot about the plague. Oh, excuse me. Before the next day, after the ground opened up and the fire and all that, people are really, really complaining, and God sends a plague to wipe them out. And Moses goes, Aaron, grab your censer quick and get some incense on it and run through this whole entire community. And everywhere that he threw the incense, it stopped the plague. So there's that. And then I forgot the order there. And then the next day they do the rod thing, and they would go back into the tabernacle then the following morning, and guess what happened? One of those rods came to life. And it grew buds and leaves. And in one night, it went from a dead stick to a live stick with ripe almonds on it. And then God says to Moses, why don't you look and see whose name is on the stick? That's who your high priest is. And guess what? It's Aaron's. You know? That's why it eventually goes inside because it shows the authority. So this is the story of Numbers. All right. 38 years go by. Fast forward. About 38 years, and God says, it is time to move on. People are dying. The first generation is close to being gone. They have a few more to go. It turns out that everybody who was 20 years and younger at the crossing of the Red Sea is considered the second generation. Everyone who is over 21 and over is considered the first generation. The entire first generation has to die except for 2 people. And those are the 2 spies who came back saying, yes, let's go in. That's Joshua and Caleb. Very good, Joshua and Caleb. And they right now are the only older people. Everybody else is 60 years old or younger, because max would be 60, right? And so it's time to go on. There's still some of the others around because we still got some more dying to do. Just saying. And they stop wandering and they go back to Kadesh Barnea, same place. And what do they do when they get there? They start complaining. Because they're thirsty, and there's no water, and we need a new leader, and let's get rid of Moses, and let's get a new leader, and that leader will take us back to Egypt, and everything will be good. And the patience of God astounds me. So God tells Moses, to go and talk to the rock. Now, the New Testament tells us in 1 Corinthians 10:4 that the rock is Jesus. So we have a direct thing of what this rock is. And the rock is the rock that followed him. It's the rock that Moses struck with the rod. It's the rock that gave the water, and it followed them. And I thought, a rock is following me. You would think they would, but anyway. So Moses is to speak to the rock, and out come water. Now you got to realize, my heart goes out to Moses on this one, because over and over and over again they have tried to kill him. They've tried to stone him. God has threatened to kill the people, which they deserve. Moses has interceded over and over and over. Moses has listened to them complain for 39 years now. Okay, that would get to me if I was in charge of that. Okay, so when they come up to him and they say, and they're complaining again, and God says, speak to the rock. I can see what happened. I can picture him getting really mad. And he and Aaron, and then he says, must I bring out water from this rock? And he takes his stick and he hits that rock twice. Okay, this was not good. Because the water comes out. This is why Moses could not go into the promised land.
Unbelievable.
Now, so I'm starting to think about this and going, compare justice here. You know what people are like, what Moses is like, Moses' faithfulness. This is a huge discipline, and so I thought that there's got to be more of the picture that I'm not seeing. And yes, he disobeyed. Yes, he was arrogant because he said, must I bring out water from the rock? And yes, he was very, very mad. So there's rage going on. So all 3 of those are wrong. But even still, considering the circumstances. So here's some ideas as to why the discipline is so very, very hard. First of all, Moses is himself a picture of Messiah, because the promise was, as you will receive a prophet like me. That was how he ends Deuteronomy. So if he is a picture of Messiah and he sins, what has he just done to the picture of Jesus Christ? Here's another one. if the first time he hits the rock is a picture of justice coming down to pay for sins, does Jesus ever, doesn't it tell us that we are never to crucify the Son of God again? So hitting it twice would be like, the first time didn't work. So there's that. So now when I look at it from that point of view of what he was presenting to the people, what he's teaching, I go, okay, maybe you're right, God. Maybe he needs a severe discipline. Maybe we need to know that he failed to present the picture of Jesus Christ correctly. That seems to me way more reason why than just because he got so mad at them. Well, he doesn't get to go in. He laments over this a lot, begs God a lot, says, please, please, please change your mind. God says, no, and stop asking me. Yeah, that happens. So the water comes out and they are on the last year of their journey. They go up and they are going to not take the same route this time. They are not going to go through this way. They're going to go, the idea is to go around here and come up on this side and cross in this way. You see that? Okay, this is Edom. Edom is the sons of Esau. And that's like Israel's first cousins, if we were to put it like that. And they come up to Mount Hor. Aaron's going to die right here. This is really, really close to Petra. So if you went to visit Petra in Jordan, you would be really close to Mount Hor. And they even have a monument there of Aaron's tomb or something like that. And I didn't get to go there, so I didn't see Petra. But they send word to Edom and they say, can you just please let us walk through? We're not going to take your water. We're not going to take your food. We're not going to take a piece of grain. We're not going to do anything. We're not going to touch your cattle. We're not going to have any conflict whatsoever. Can we just follow the road? There's a main highway through there. Can we just walk through? No, you can't. Edom says no. So they have to do this big loop around, way down here, to come up around here, okay? While they're down there, while they're on the loop, they start complaining.
Surprise.
Who figured, right? Would have not seen that coming. And God sends serpents that are called fiery serpents. I've had some people think that's cobras, who knows what, but whatever it is, it's poisonous serpents, and they're biting them like crazy, and people are dropping dead. Well, they're dropping dead like all over the place. And so Moses goes, God, and he intercedes again. God says, build this weird thing, right? And to me, this is a weird thing. You put this snake on a pole, and you lift it up, and then you say to the people who are dying because they've been bit, look at the snake. So Moses went, and you realize that there's thousands of people who won't look? If they look, they're healed instantly, and they won't look. But what is wrong? Anyway, so you know how that story plays out, right? This is the conversation with Nicodemus. Nicodemus comes to Jesus and he goes, I don't get this all born again thing. I don't understand what you're doing. I can't crawl into my mom's womb again. It's not making sense to me. And Jesus says to him, just like Moses lifted up the serpent on the pole, so the Son of Man, that's a name for himself, will be lifted up. And it's a picture of the cross. Now exactly why there's a snake on there, the only thing I can think of is it defeats Satan. So I'm still working on that one as far as the details of that. Been working on that one for a long, long, long time. But if you guys have any great insight on that, I'll listen to you and learn from you. So a lot of them die. I forget how many of them die. A bunch of them die. Like thousands of them die. And we come up to here. Now Moab, there's a few things for future things. We have Amorites, and Ammonites. Get used to the two names. I know. There's an R in this one, and there's not an R in this one. Ammon and Moab are the sons of Lot by his daughters, which was an incestual thing that happened right after the Sodom and Gomorrah thing. And so the Moabites are like second cousins. If these guys are like first cousins, these guys are like second or third cousins. These guys is the other son of Lot, the Ammonites. God would not let Israelites wipe out Edom or Moab or Ammon. They're part of that big family. But the Amorites are not. The Amorites are to be removed, and the Canaanites are to be removed. So just as you read it, it took me a while to get used to the two names and figure out what's going on between the two names. Well, Moab does what Edom does, and they say, no, you can't come through, so they have to go around. And they come up between these two, right around here. Actually, they're going to come up here, so this map might be a little bit off, a little bit, because they're going to be at the northern edge of the Dead Sea. And right there, God gives the Israelites a victory over two major kingdoms, and that's called Sihon and Og. That's up in this area. There's two major kingdoms. This is called the Plains of Moab up here, partially because this used to be Moab and they conquered them like right before this story took place. So they're up in this area and they had this huge victory. Sihon is a great king and they have like 30 walled cities and they beat the whole group. And Og is this huge giant man. It says that his bed is 13 and a half feet long and it's 6 feet wide. And for them, now they didn't have king size beds like we do, you know, so a 6 foot wide bed was really a big bed, but that's how big this guy was. Yes, so he's a huge guy, and yeah, they have complete victory over that. And some of the tribes are going to go in here and live in this area. We're going to have the ones that live on the east are going to go there. And we'll go over that next time. Okay, so now we're down to the end of Numbers. There's all kinds of stuff in Numbers. There's lots of review. Moses goes over everything they've done. And we're ready for Deuteronomy. So, they're standing here in the plains of Moab. And most of Deuteronomy takes place in one day. Okay? This is Moses' last speech to his people. And these are his last words. After this is done, he's going to go up on no, I lost it. Anyway, that mountain right there. And he's going to die up there. So these words are incredibly important. He's going to tell them. And what he does is he's going to review. He's standing there. Oh, wait a minute. Big important story. Yes, I'm sorry I missed it. After they conquered these two people, the king of Moab, whose name is Balak, decides he's got to do something. So he gets this brilliant idea. He's going to send for this incredibly famous sorcerer, wizard, guy who can bring down curses, who is way over here in the Mesopotamia area, and his name is Balaam. And he's going to go get Balaam and hire Balaam to curse Israel. So while he's over there, God comes and tells Balaam, don't go. Now, Balaam has enough. I do not know if Balaam believed, but I do not know how Balaam stands, because Balaam does a lot of bad stuff. But he has enough wherewithal to know that God's talking to him and that he should listen. So he tells the embassy group, or whatever that you call that came out there, he goes, nope, can't do that. But he happens to really like money. He's a real money guy. So they go back and Moab goes, well, we'll double it or we'll triple it or whatever, you know. And so he finally goes, I can't turn that down. It's a lot of money. So he goes back and And that's where the donkey talks to him. It says, Balaam, you would think, would get his warning. Anyway, God says, you can go ahead. You can go. But you're not going to curse him. So he gets up there, he comes all the way back, and Balak is real pleased. He's got this great Balaam here, and we're going up on the mountain. We're looking down at this massive people, and we're going to put this huge curse on them. So they do all the, cut open the liver, and let all the thing go out, and all the sacrifices, and all the sorcery stuff. And he opens his mouth, and out comes this wonderful blessing to the people of Israel. And Balak is standing there going, wait a minute, that's not what I ordered. So he tried again. And they do it all again, and out comes this wonderful blessing. And they do it, I think they do it 3 times. And out comes this wonderful blessing. And the people of Israel are just going about their business, but in the middle of that, there's this incredible prophecy. And it's in Numbers 24:17, I think. So Balaam says this. Let me see what 20%. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star will come forth from Jacob, and a scepter will rise from Israel. And he shall crush through the forehead of Moab. I'm sure that Balaam didn't know that. But do you see what that prophecy is of? That's the prophecy of the birth of Messiah. That is probably the prophecy, that's probably how the Magi know what's going on when they see the star. And they probably got the book from Daniel, but I'm jumping way ahead in the story. Okay? So that happens, so we get this wonderful prophecy of Jesus, and okay, so the whole thing is a failure. And all that happens is that Israel just gets this great blessing coming out, and Moab is not pleased. So they go down, and you can just see the king of Moab is not very pleased with Balaam, but Balaam has a suggestion for him. And he gives this suggestion, he goes, why don't you have your ladies who serve at the temple of Baal of Peor and come and flirt with the guys of Judah. So when the ladies, or the priestesses, serve at the temple of Baal of Peor, that is a system of prostitution worship. So these are what, and they come by zillions. And they come into the camp, and they get the men of Israel to stop worshiping Yahweh and worship Baal of Peor because of what's going on. And it is blatant. It's out in the open. It's everywhere. And there's thousands of them doing this. And of course, God is horrified. Moses is horrified. He goes to the door of the temple. He goes to the tent of meeting, the tabernacle, and he's crying, and he's weeping, and he's interceding, and he's just a mess. It's a horrible, horrible day. And there's other people standing there too. Well, there's one guy from the tribe of Simeon, and he is one of the main guys, and he takes a princess from Midian who happens to be really connected with Moab, and they come in and they go into their tent and do it right there. Now that particular tent has a different word for tent than any other place in the Old Testament. So many people think it is the tent of worship for Baal of Peor, but it's within sight of the tabernacle. And that's what's happening. Okay. So Eleazar's son, who now will be the next high priest, his name is Phinehas. Remember I asked you guys about Phinehas? I didn't know much about Phinehas until just recently. So he is like horrified that this is so close to where God is. Some people even think that they did it inside God's tabernacle. That they put the guy and the girl inside the tabernacle. That is really reflective of the abomination of desolation that is about to come. So he is absolutely infuriated, and he grabs a spear or a javelin or some weapon, I can't think of which one it was right now, and he kills them through together in the act. And it says that because he did that, the plague stopped, and 24,000 men died that day. That's how massive this was. That might have been the last of the old generation. It was the guy of Simeon, and it was a son of Levi. Do you remember what Simeon and Levi did earlier? They are the ones that went into Shechem. One of those two guys recovered their line. One did not. You see how that is? And I thought, we could always have, you have a horrible family story, there's always room for grace to recover. So that's the end of that, and God makes a covenant with Phinehas. And he says, this is the covenant that I was talking about with Phinehas. He says, because you had zeal for me, and you were jealous for me, like my jealousy is for me. And then this word is used in a positive sense, like a husband who's protective of his wife, that kind of sense. And he goes, because you did that, and he just like went for it. You're not going to do this to my God. That's what Phinehas was like. I'm going to make a covenant with you, and in your line will be the priesthood from here on in. So he got that. That was another covenant that I haven't mentioned to you a couple weeks ago. So there's that. Now we've got Joshua gets appointed. Moses is going to die. When Moses dies, he goes up on top of, and I lost the name of the mountain. But anyway, it's right there. It's right here. He's able to look in, and he's able to see the promised land. And he's able to see it, but he doesn't get to go in. And he dies alone, and nobody knows what happened to his body. And the Israelite people did not get to have a funeral for him. They did not get to bury him. They did not get to make a memorial for him. You could see how wise God was, because they would have turned Moses into an idol. And it does tell us in Jude that Satan and Michael have a fight over Moses' body. So that's pretty cool. Michael wins, Satan loses. I like that. I just like that Michael wins and Satan loses. And the body is buried somewhere where no one can go and turn it into a shrine, which is very important. Okay, so before Moses dies, he has his last speech, and that's Deuteronomy. I really wondered how to organize Deuteronomy for you. But I thought, what I think I will do is, I noticed as I'm reading through, it touched me more than it ever had before. And I'm going through and I'm going, how many times did Moses say, guys, obey? Obey. So he's talking along, he's going to do a review of their history, and then he's going to stop and he's going to go, oh, this is most important. Obey the Lord your God, keep his commandments, and no other gods. Okay, so then he's going to talk along for another 10 minutes or so. Make sure you have no other gods. Make sure you obey. He's going to talk along for another half an hour. No idols. Don't you build any idols. He's going to do it a little bit more. No other gods. He constantly is reminded. So I made a list of all the times he said no other gods. It's in chapter 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, 13, 16, 17, 18, 27, 29, 30, 32. You think he kind of means no other gods. Obey the covenant. And all the reasons why. And I just thought, instead of, you can go through, read it in order, it'll touch your heart. You could just see that his grandpa is talking to his grandchildren, and he's about to die. He goes, this is most important. I've got to pass this on. And they probably stand for 5 hours. and this big crowd listening to Moses. And he says, don't add, don't take away. And then there's these warnings. Don't be rebellious. Get your heart circumcised, because you don't have a circumcised heart. You have a non-circumcised. You've got stiff, hard flesh all over your heart. It's like a stone. Get that. Don't do what is right in your own eyes. He actually says that. Don't do what is right in your own eyes. You know what's coming. It's amazing that he actually says those words. You don't have a heart to know. You don't have eyes to see. You don't have ears to hear. What's wrong with your guys' eyes, ears, and heart? Get your heart. Don't have any other gods. Obey the commandments. And then he'll go on and he'll repeat the covenant. He will tell them that they are a holy people. He does the preamble all over again. He does it not in order. You're going to say, this is your God. This is what he's like. And then 3 chapters later, this is your God. This is what he's like. And then 3 chapters later, this is your God. This is what he's like. He's going over and over and over and over and over. And then he's going to do the historical probe. This is what he did. He brought you up from the land of Egypt. It was not that golden calf. He brought you up from the land of Egypt. And then he's the one who protected you. He's the one who wiped out the gods of Egypt. He's the one who ruled over Pharaoh. You know, he's going to go on and on. And then the whole 10 Commandments are repeated. And then it's explained in detail. So let's say you don't understand, obey your parents. Let me explain that to you. You know, so he goes and explains it in detail. So you don't understand what it means to not lie? All right, let me say, if you lie in this situation, this is going to happen. And if you lie in this situation, this is what's going to happen. So he goes over and over and over. I mean, amazing teaching process here. And he's going to go through the blessings. And then he's going to go through the cursings. You know, if you obey, your bowl will be blessed. Meaning, when you cook, what you cook is going to be blessed. Your sheep will be blessed. Your flocks will be blessed. Your ground will be blessed. Your children will be blessed. When you grow wheat, it will grow well. When you have kids, they'll be healthy. On and on and on. And then he goes through curses. Oh, don't obey? Nothing's going to work. You're going to plant this huge acre. You're going to get 5 square feet of growing food. You're going to have this huge flock. Half of them are going to be born sickly and weak and unable to whatever. Blessings and curses. And there's 4 times as many cursings as there are blessings. And the reason is because people are stupid. Okay? And then why? Why do the curses come? Oh, maybe because you built an idol. And you had another god. Don't have any more gods. And then there's a promise of Messiah in the midst of this. He actually calls down witnesses. Remember the part that has the witnesses? I call down heaven and earth to witness against you today. There's your witnesses. It's recorded. And it's put into, and then it's given a periodic reading. How to do this. Remember the outline of the covenant that we did? Okay, there's a ratification ceremony. Again, another one with the next generation. And he even looks at it and he goes, this is not the covenant that I gave to your parents. What he's saying is, this covenant is your covenant. This is not, you're carrying over your parents' covenant. This is for you. And he does that. And then he describes, and then he goes, and you're all, when I die, this is what's going to happen. You're going to go get other gods, and you're going to reject everything, and you're going to do it all wrong, and you're going to get discipline, and then you're going to get famines, and then you're going to get enemies attack, and eventually it's going to keep going and going and going, and eventually they're going to come in and take you away. And Moses tells them this in Deuteronomy. And he said, but there's hope, because your Lord, the Lord your God, will be faithful to you, and he will bring you back. Now, you guys remember the covenant? There's absolutely no reason in this covenant for God to bring them back. That's going back to the Abrahamic covenant. God will keep that covenant. And I was just blown away. What's going on here? God's desire is written in 5:19. He wishes they had a heart to keep the covenant. That's what he wanted. God's sadness in 31, that they don't have a heart to keep the covenant. So he has to do all this. But he does keep the Abrahamic covenant, and he does preserve his people regardless. So I was going to end with the Shema. The Shema is the opening statement that is said in the synagogue every Sunday, or every Saturday, excuse me. That was wrong. And it goes like this. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And it means, listen, O Israel, the Lord is your God. No other gods. The Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. And these words that I am commanding you today shall be in your heart, and you shall teach them diligently to your sons. And you shall speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And they shall be as something on your wrist and frontlet bands on your forehead. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your houses and on your gates. And this is where they got the idea of the mezuzah on the wall. And they kissed the mezuzah, because inside that little thing is a piece of Torah, piece of this law. And they are to love that, and it's to be everywhere. So I was thinking, that's Deuteronomy 6, 4 through maybe 9. And I was thinking how much they had of it, and how much evidence they had of their God, and how much it was written, and how much it's going everywhere, and how much they're supposed to talk about, and how far their hearts still are. So I was looking around my house, and on my walls are Amazing Grace crosses, love, hope, love, faith,
Right. Yeah.
peace, whatever, and verses that say that God thinks about us at all times. I'm losing it blank. You go into the next room, there's another Bible verses stuck around all over. There's no way you could enter my house and not know that. And how many times do I have this written in front of me all the time and forget that God is, and I'm having a hard day, complaining, going, oh my goodness, I can't do that. Anyway, it dawned on me that I'm in the same condition. And every one of us is in that same condition. Which is why I'm really, really glad we go and put the blood on the Holy of Holies. And this is now opened up so that we can come with boldness before the throne of grace, which is what this is, so that we can receive mercy and have grace to help in time of need. Okay, we raced through the entire Torah. We'll start with Joshua next week. Dear Father in heaven, thank you for showing us your tremendous love and patience and kindness and mercy and grace in this story. Thank you for also showing us that justice requires judgment, and that the blood is a picture that Jesus took that judgment for us. And that please don't let this image leave our minds. Let us remember all the time. When we get into a complaining day, help us to remember how faithful you really are to us. In Jesus' name, amen.